We've got breaking news in Michael Irvin's $100 million defamation lawsuit against Marriott. In this video, we'll talk about what happened during the March 10th emergency hearing after Marriott refused to produce a copy of the surveillance footage depicting the interaction between Michael Irvin and his accuser. Then we'll take a look at highlights from Marriott's new motion, in which Marriott reveals new details about the allegations that were made against Michael Irvin. On March 10th, Judge Mazant held an emergency hearing on Michael Irvin's motion to enforce court order after Marriott had refused to turn over a copy of the surveillance footage to Irvin's attorney. So here is the Dallas Morning News article covering what happened at the emergency hearing that was held last Friday. As you can see from the title of this article, it did not go in Marriott's favor. It did not go well for Marriott. The article reports that during the hearing, the judge said that Marriott had blatantly violated his court order to give Michael Irvin video recordings related to the former Cowboy wide receiver's February 5th hotel encounter with a woman in Arizona, delivering a follow-up order as punishment that allows the public to view the footage. Marriott was required to send an unredacted video of the incident to Irvin's representative by 5 p.m. Friday. No protective order was placed over the recording despite Marriott's request in court Friday for one, effectively allowing the video's release. Quote, "That's the penalty you face," U.S. District Judge Amos Mazant said Friday to Marriott. So the judge basically slammed the gavel down on Marriott for its refusal to turn over a copy of the surveillance footage where Marriott had the opportunity to blur out the faces. The judge is now ordering Marriott to turn over and produce the unredacted, unaltered version of that video footage as penalty for Marriott's recalcitrance in dealing with Irvin. The article goes on to say that Judge Mazant criticized Marriott for placing its own conditions on how the video would be produced. "I'm not accustomed to, as a judge, people violating my orders," Mazant said. Marriott's attorney said that Marriott respects the court orders, to which the judge fired back and said, "I'll be very candid with you. You haven't shown that. That's the reason we're here. Am I happy about that? No, I am not happy about that. It seems like Marriott just looked at my order and didn't want to produce the video." And I think that's a fairly accurate and fair criticism of how Marriott handled this, which was terrible to say the least. According to the article, Irvin's lawyer said, "Everybody who views the video will see what I've seen and what the witnesses who were there have seen. Michael didn't do anything wrong." So here you can see the court's order following the hearing, the emergency hearing. It says pending before the court is Michael Irvin's emergency motion to enforce the previous court order requiring the production of that surveillance footage to Irvin. And it says that Irvin's motion is granted and then orders Marriott to produce the disputed surveillance video evidence sought in plaintiff's request for production number 1 without modification by March 10th, 2023 at 5 p.m. So presumably Marriott has already produced the unaltered, unredacted version of the surveillance footage over to Michael Irvin and his legal team. So expect to see a copy of the surveillance footage released by Irvin's legal team any day now. And we can all see for ourselves what happened between the Jane Doe defendant employee and Michael Irvin. And we can verify that nothing happened, or we can speculate about what actually did happen. As you'll see in a second from a new motion that Marriott has filed, Marriott has framed the interaction in quite a different light. So here we have Marriott's new motion, which it is calling a motion for protective order and to limit pretrial publicity. They filed this the same afternoon as the hearing. In the introduction, it states that in Michael Irvin's latest attempt to feed the media frenzy he created, he and his counsel held a live-streamed press conference on March 8th. During the press conference, Irvin's counsel provided a self-serving, inaccurate summary of the video footage Marriott produced, including his claim that the footage proves Irvin did nothing wrong. Well, Marriott, you really can't be heard to complain about that, because they wanted all along just to show the public the actual surveillance footage. So as Irvin's attorney said during the press conference, they have only themselves to blame for the fact that he was having to sit there and describe what was depicted in the video footage. And had Marriott turned over the actual surveillance footage, Irvin's lawyer wouldn't have had to have described it to the public during that press conference. Marriott goes on to complain that the facts will ultimately show that Irvin made unwelcome sexual advances against a female employee of the Renaissance Phoenix downtown hotel, an employee, the victim, who did not know who Irvin was and who, in reporting his despicable behavior, sought nothing more than to be free from further harassment. It says the facts will also show that the hotel did nothing more than follow, number one, its normal steps for investigating and addressing reports of sexual harassment by guests, and number two, the NFL's express direction to notify it in the event of any incidents involving its personnel staying at the hotel. The victim did nothing wrong and certainly did not defame Irving or interfere with his NFL contract. In the interim, however, the court should take swift action to ensure that Irvin and his counsel do not jeopardize the safety and privacy of the victim, the hotel's employees, and its guests, or further prejudice Marriott's right to a fair trial with additional inflammatory publications of and misleading commentary on the evidence in this case. To accomplish this, the court should prohibit Irvin from publicly disclosing any video recordings from using such videos for any purpose other than litigating this case. Further, in accordance with the applicable ethics rules, the court should prohibit Irvin's counsel directly or by proxy from further communicating on or characterizing the evidence in this case. Then, in the most interesting portion of Marriott's motion, it laid out some new details concerning its allegations against Irvin and what ultimately led to his cancellation from TV during the Super Bowl week. So let's go ahead and read the background section of Marriott's motion. It says, given Irvin's false narrative regarding the events of February 5th and 6th, Marriott provides the court with the following summary of key facts it has learned from the hotel since Irvin filed this action. Moving on to the next page, Chapter 1, the National Football League arranges for Irvin to stay at the hotel. In Chapter 2 of this, it says Irvin becomes intoxicated and harasses the victim. Irvin arrived at the hotel on February 5th, 2023. That evening, when he returned to the hotel after dinner, he appeared to be visibly intoxicated in the hotel bar. Now, I want to point out that we saw a video from a fan who had posted it on Twitter and various other social media of Irvin actually talking to some fans in the hotel bar after he had come back that night. And at least in my opinion, he didn't appear to be intoxicated in that video. He might have used some coarse language. It was kind of hard to actually tell what he was saying, but his speech was not slurred and he certainly wasn't having trouble standing up. It goes on to state that as the victim entered the dust cutter, Irvin flagged her down and the two stepped into the hotel lobby. Irvin shook her hand, asked if she worked there and what she did there. The victim confirmed that she worked there and asked if she could help Irvin with anything. Irvin then stated that she was attractive and reached out to shake her hand, asked her name, and introduced himself as Michael. Irvin then asked whether she watched football, to which the victim responded that she did not, and Irvin told her she should look him up on the internet sometime. Irvin also reached out and touched the victim's arm during the conversation without her consent, causing her to step back, becoming visibly uncomfortable. Moving on, it states that Irvin then asked the victim whether she, and then I blacked this out just because I don't want YouTube to monetize this video, but essentially they're claiming that Irvin asked her if she'd ever been with a black man. It's a little bit more crude than that, what was actually quoted in this. But in any case, that is the quote misconduct that Irvin is being accused of here. Taken aback by Irvin's comments, the victim responded that his comments were inappropriate and she did not wish to discuss it further. Irvin then attempted to grab the victim's hand again and said he was sorry if he brought up bad memories for her. The victim pulled her hand away and tried to back away from Irvin as he continued to move towards her. So what is so bizarre about this is this version of events is so distinctly different from the version of events that Irvin has told, but also that those two TMZ witnesses have told. They said that there was a totally jovial interaction between the two. There was nothing, quote, untoward that happened. There was no sign of any kind of offense given or taken during that interaction. And yet here we have Marriott saying that it's visible from the video surveillance footage that this woman was taken aback and that she stepped backwards away from Irvin and looked, perhaps maybe she even looked offended or repulsed. Moving on to the next page, page 4, it states that during this interaction, two other hotel employees noticed that the victim had a look of concern on her face and began moving towards Irvin and the victim, prompting Irvin to state that security had noticed him and extend his hand for another handshake. Seems like there's a lot of handshakes going on here. Seeing that the other hotel employees were in the area and wanting the interaction to end, the victim returned Irvin's handshake. Irvin then stated that he would come back to find her sometime that week when she was working. The victim then left the interaction to assist another employee who was waiting for her in the dust cutter, with Irvin leering at her as she walked away. As the victim was walking away, another employee who had assisted Irvin earlier in the day walked over to Irvin. After Irvin finished leering at the victim and turned back to employee number one, he said aloud, she bad, I want to hit that," and slapped himself in the face 3 times, saying, "Keep it together, Mike." Employee one observed that Irvin was slurring his words and acting like he was under the influence. After slapping himself, Irvin pivoted and said to employee one, "Let's go take a picture over there," referring to another area of the hotel lobby. Employee one agreed, snapped one photo of the two of them, shook hands with Irvin, and assisted him with finding the elevator. Irvin entered the elevator and, to the hotel's knowledge, went about his business the following day. Chapter 3. The victim reports the harassment to coworkers and management. Following her interaction with Irvin, the victim reported his comments to another hotel employee, employee number 2, who noticed that she appeared visibly shaken by the event and finished what little remained of her shift. As soon as she arrived at work the next day, February 6th, the victim reported Irvin's comments to her manager and expressed concern that she would have to continue to see Irvin that week. It goes on to say on page 5 that the victim gave a short handwritten statement recounting Irvin's comments to loss prevention, which escalated the matter to the hotel's director of operations, who interviewed the victim. Chapter 4, the hotel informs the NFL of the incident and continues its investigation. Following his interview of the victim, pursuant to the NFL's prior direction, the hotel's director of operations contacted the NFL's designated point of contact to advise that they had received a report that one of the NFL's guests, that would be Irvin, had made sexually harassing remarks to a female employee. The NFL's point of contact responded that someone else would contact the director of operations to follow up. The director of operations then worked with the hotel's loss prevention department to pull the relevant footage and reviewed it. After reviewing the video footage, he concluded that the video was consistent with the victim's report that the interaction was inappropriate. Further, based on the victim's statement, the video footage, and Irvin's statement that he would come back to find the victim later during his stay, the director of operations concluded that Irvin posed a potential safety risk to the victim and other employees. After further discussion with the hotel's general manager and other security personnel, the hotel believed that Irvin should leave the premises, especially given his statement that he would come back to find the victim. However, the hotel took no further action pending the NFL's investigation. Now, this is the first time that I have heard anything about the NFL having a separate investigation into this incident, but apparently the NFL, as we learn in this next section, had its own investigator look into this matter. So let's read chapter 5 here. The NFL interviews the victim and reviews the video footage. Shortly thereafter, early in the evening of February 6, 2023, the NFL sent its investigator to the hotel and asked if the victim was willing to speak with her. The victim agreed to the interview and repeated her account of her interaction with Irvin. The NFL investigator then asked to review the video, and the hotel allowed her to do so. Following her review of the video, the NFL investigator escalated the matter, and additional NFL personnel quickly arrived at the hotel. Thereafter, the NFL handled all communication with Irvin, including the need for him to leave the property. At no point did hotel security or anyone else affiliated with the hotel wake up Irvin or remove him from the hotel. Rather, Irvin arrived in the lobby at approximately 10 p.m. that same evening, alone and fully dressed in a suit and tie with his suitcase packed. 2 NFL representatives then walked out of the hotel with Irvin, where a chauffeured vehicle was waiting for him. Irvin left the hotel without further incident. Then, moving on to chapter 6, Irvin initiates a media circus and files this lawsuit. It goes on to say that on or about February 9th, 2023, Irvin began speaking with the media, admitting that he had been drinking and could not remember the interaction with the victim, and stating that his only physical contact with the victim was a handshake. Then on the next page, 7, it states, although neither the hotel nor Marriott had any involvement in the NFL's analysis of Irvin's behavior or its decision with respect to his work for the NFL, Irvin filed this lawsuit against Marriott for defamation and tortious interference, seeking $100 million in damages. Then, Chapter 7, it states the hotel receives threats, improper inquiries, and derogatory comments. So I won't read this paragraph to you, but basically Marriott is just complaining that Marriott started receiving all of these threats and people were busting into the hotel to investigate the matter and spamming them on Google, leaving negative reviews and angry comments. And so Marriott is basically, this is Marriott playing the victim here. Then Chapter 8, it states Irvin's latest press conference necessitates this motion. On March 3rd, 2023, Irvin and his counsel held a public live-streamed press conference and then goes on to accuse Irvin's lawyer of mischaracterizing the video footage that he watched as follows. First, claiming that the video does not show whether Irvin or the victim spoke to the other first. Then point number 2, they say that Irvin's lawyer mischaracterized the video footage by claiming that the victim never acted upset, does not back away from Irvin, or act as if there are any problems. Then these final 2 points that Marriott is making, they actually have nothing to do with supposedly mischaracterizing the video footage. Claiming that the hotel woke Irvin up in the middle of the night and asked him to leave without explanation. Irvin never claimed that that is on the video footage of his interaction with the woman, and quite frankly, it has nothing to do with the video footage. So I'm not even sure why Marriott added that in there, other than to complain that they didn't like Irvin's lawyer saying that. Then in this final point here, Marriott attacks Irvin's lawyer for claiming that Marriott is trying to use the video to destroy Irvin. And again, I would say, no, that is not actually what Irvin has ever argued. Irvin is saying that Marriott is refusing to allow him to use the video footage to exonerate himself. Not that Marriott is using the video footage to destroy Irvin's reputation. Marriott is not letting anybody use the video footage. It won't even disclose it. Finally, we get to the conclusion section of Marriott's motion, in which it asks the court for an order prohibiting the public disclosure of any video recordings produced to date or pursuant to any further court orders, and barring all counsel from making extrajudicial statements regarding the evidence in this case and what it does or does not show. Unfortunately for Marriott, this motion is too little, too late. So definitely expect to see the new surveillance footage that Marriott has finally turned over in the coming days. Make sure to hit that subscribe button below and turn the bell notification icon on so you don't miss any breaking new developments in this case. And of course, as always, thank you for watching.